All right. Happy Tuesday, everybody, and welcome to another Future Focused, where we are exploring the landscape of business, technology, and human experience with the goal of keeping you 10 steps ahead. Today, I'm looking forward to this conversation, like I look forward to every conversation, but this one is going to be a fun one. We're going to be talking about AI for content creation, and we're going to dig into some of the things like text to video, text to, what AI avatars are capable of and how to use this, which if you followed my stuff for long, I talk about this from all different angles, but this one in particular, we're going to be talking about it from a very positive lens of like, where can this practically be used? Because yes, you hear about the nefarious purposes and some of the bad things you can do with it. And I feel like sometimes, a lot of times, that overshadows the really practical, helpful ways that we can use these advancements and technologies to make experiences better, make people's lives easier, and overall improve experiences for end users. So to navigate that conversation with me, I'm joined by Alex Upenskyi. There we go. I almost missed it. Alex Upenskyi, who is the founder of Elai. And so thanks so much, Alex, for joining me.
Thank you very much. Happy to chat.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. And it's so funny because we were talking backstage about this. So you were in Canada, you are in Spain now, you're from Ukraine. You've had quite a journey. So I actually am curious on this, given that, geographical diversity of your background. How did you end up getting into what do you say, like the AI video generation space? Like, how did you end up deciding, hey, I'm going to build a company that's focused on AI for video generation?
From I think even when I was in school, I was into like engineering and creating stuff. So I graded as software engineer. So my background is really technical. So for me, it
so
was
you at
like,
least had kind of that technical acumen getting started, where you knew you were going to do something with tech.
yeah, definitely. And AI is just like, more advanced tech and something that's even cooler that you can do. So I basically organically come to this. Yeah. So I started with like just simple apps, then something more advanced, and then I think maybe 5 years ago, I came into like AI and specifically like machine learning, what this technology can do. And like basically it can up that through all the like last 5 years, I would say, I'm into like AI and machine learning.
Okay. Got it. So yeah, okay. Because like sometimes some of the guests I have, they're like, they started in film and they were doing this, and then you're like, and then you started an AI company. So it's always interesting to hear. You took a not traditional, but you took a more predictable, I think, journey in terms of that.
Yeah.
Now I'm sure you've seen a lot, because going back to what you said, so you were going down this technical path, and really the advancements we've seen in artificial intelligence have really accelerated, I think, largely. I mean, they've been accelerating for a long time, but a lot of folks think like this might be a 2022 thing, but it really hasn't. I mean, machine learning really took off. Deep learning took off in 2017 is really when it started going. And as we saw it advance. So when you first were getting into AI and stuff, where did you think that would go? And where did you have any things where you thought, this is the direction I'm going to go, and you pivoted? Because I'm guessing, I mean, I think back to 2017, AI for video creation, that wasn't really on the map at that point.
Yeah, it wasn't. It's true. I think the first time when I like started to do something with machine learning, it was like pretty. It was not that fun at that time. It just was some tables and like it's basically about data and like turning one data into other data, some predictions. That was something more advanced, but again, it was like, okay, predict.
AI wasn't super fun and sexy like it is now, where you're like,
Exactly.
oh wow, I can just type in a few words and come up with this really beautiful image. You're like, no, you were taking massive amounts of data and, like you said, predicting conclusions on other massive amounts of data.
It was not fun until like it started to be related to computer vision, like when the pictures, something to do with pictures and working and like transforming pictures. Of course, I think the boom and everything changed, like started to change maybe a couple years ago or 3 years.
Yeah. As generative AI, as the GPTs
Exactly.
really started coming together, that's, I think, when not only did we see mainstream adoption, but we started to see some of this just more
Yeah.
advanced capability that people started going, whoa, we can do some crazy stuff with this.
Yeah, I think it's basically a couple of things. First one is actually the generating of videos, images, like from any scene, or like getting the picture there close to what some masters can do. Yeah, and
Yeah.
also for me the crazy thing was when I first checked ChatGPT 3.5.
Okay.
So basically it's one of the first large language models that are actually could help people, and like it feels like you really have a conversation. So because I checked OpenAI products before, and it was like, okay, this is just give me the another portion of text, and like it was not that fun. But as soon as
Yeah.
they changed the model, that it really started to help people and like to answer your questions, to understand you, that's changed everything. So now like we have this boom of large language models, and I think this is like the biggest thing that came up in AI for the last year.
Okay. Yeah, it's been interesting to watch this over the past few years really evolve. And um in some ways it's been a huge leap forward. In some ways I chuckle. I had a guest on I think a few weeks and we were laughing about the fact, and for some folks who watch or listen to this, you won't relate to it because you weren't a nerd like I was. But like in some ways, it reminds me of back in the early 90s, some of like the text-based RPGs, where we've kind of like gone back in time where it's like, oh, and now I like type in my command and then it does a thing. And then I type in my other command and it does a thing. So in some ways, we've really jumped forward. And in some ways, we've actually gone back to some of the basics of actually a really natural and intuitive way for us to communicate, which I think is, we see in text messaging, we see in a lot of other ways. It's very normal for us to communicate through that kind of language based communication. Okay. So
Yeah.
then so then as that advanced, where did hey, we could use this for generating video. Where did that come into play?
um for me, I just tell a bit my experience, I think. So
Okay.
how could I come up to this? So I actually have another business, which is like basically a software development company. So I founded it eight
Okay.
years ago. It was basically one of my first business, and it's still growing the company, but I'm not operational into it. And at some stage I just like quitted it as a CEO, as an operational manager. It was 4 years
Okay.
ago, and at that time I was like, okay, I want to build something super techy, super cool. And of course I looked into AI space. So
Okay.
I really dive. So I had some time to really spend it on research and like understanding what's going on in the AI space. And I saw this technology of basically turning audio into somebody lip syncing, and like basically it calls lip sync when person is
Yep.
saying that's based on the audio. And I really fell in love with that, and I thought it's like super cool idea. It was more than 3 years ago, but I
Okay.
already saw that it's the future. So now we all see lots of AI avatars, but at this time, I just saw that it's
I
something
mean,
that
if you
will
think
change the
about it
world.
though, at its time, and it's so funny we say 3 years ago like that was so long ago, but in the AI age,
Exactly.
3 years is like a century in some ways.
Yeah.
But it is interesting because I do remember when that technology first started where you could basically dub, in a different, and it was really used for translation stuff largely. It was kind of solving that translation problem of, well, we want a video of somebody else saying things in a different language, but we don't want the kind of, I think of like old kung fu movies where you're watching it in English and You're like, that's not, it doesn't fit. But it was this kind of early, like, hey, how do we morph the video using text so that it actually matches? So that was kind of your genesis of like, hey, if we can do this, we could go further.
Exactly. It's technically you change the lips and you don't need this text and this video to have it did before, right? So how
Yep.
avatars are working right now is basically the same. You got the video and you change what person is saying on the video. So
Okay.
technically it's the same, but it feels like you all the time has new video. Yeah. Of
Okay.
course technology is evolving a lot, and now it allows to not only like change the lip syncing but also change the whole video, like the whole body
Yeah.
of the avatar. But back there, like even the lip sync, it was like already something that's changing how people
Okay.
create videos overall.
Well, and I guess when you think about it like that, it is one of those things where when you start unpacking some of these technical capabilities, some of the same foundations remain the same. Because to your point, a lip syncing video is really AI generated video. It's just you've got basically the base frame, and then you're like, well, we need the face to move different. So we'll use AI to transform that. To go beyond just the lips isn't really that big of a leap anymore. You're like, well, we just need to change the background or where the person's sitting or what the person looks like. We can put a different mask on it and make it do the same things.
Yeah, it depends on the use case. I think as we went really into like the specific use case of creating like learning content, uh, I think the first, so we actually during these 3 years we tried different use cases.
Okay.
So and we just came up that specifically for this one, this type of videos work best, specifically for like creating learning content. And we also focus on the technologies that are fit to this use case. So if you're talking about, for example, some fun apps when you put mask on your face,
Yeah.
or like other fun things that you can do in apps, then the different use case and then a different AI technologies can be used. So I think now it's really depends on the use case, and like it's lots of different professions, use cases, problems that need to be solved in a different way, and it could be solved but really different AI technologies and AI
Okay.
approaches, or without AI even. So it
Well,
depends.
I mean, I think the thing that's interesting about this, and I want to dig deeper into some of like the capabilities that are behind this, because we're going to talk about like voice cloning and the AI avatars. But really, when you think about what AI has done, I think sometimes when I hear the fear and some of the concern around this, it can sometimes come from this idea that this is brand new stuff that's never been done before. But when I really think about what's going on here, we've been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. It's just AI is making it much more scalable than it was. I mean, you think about big movie productions. It's not new to, put a CGI mask on somebody and change the way they look, and I mean if anybody who's watched some of this stuff on behind the scenes of videos, like we've been changing the
Yeah,
way people look in video, changing the way they sound and I mean this isn't brand new, but I think what we're talking about with what AI has done is it's made it a lot simpler because you used to need a whole production cast to have to do this and a whole team of like editors to edit video to be able to do this. And what AI is doing is it's actually just making it much easier.
yeah,
Is that a reasonable conclusion?
yeah, I agree. So it's the technology itself is not like grabbing anybody's jobs. It's more about like these small pieces that new things that new software can do. It just helping in a different scenarios to speed up things, to make things simpler, make things cheaper to produce. As you mentioned in movies itself, lots of I see lots of AI startups or like new AI technologies that changing the movies. For example, another company from Ukraine called Respeecher, what they do is that they not doing the voice from the text, but they actually changing the voice. So in the movie,
Okay.
you need like specific accent, specific phrases to be said in specific time. But they, for example, create voice of like Darth Vader or somebody else. instead of like, so they have an actor that is speaking his voice, and artificially they change its voice into something else. So
Yeah.
it's lots of different things that just helping to make things better, and you have, in the end, you have better movie, better content, and your life is just easier whatever you do.
Well, and I think about some of the, I mean, anybody who's, and I think this is just something, if somebody has not been involved in video production, if you haven't been involved in it, you don't fully appreciate how much like non-glamorous robotic stuff is being done. That's like that people hate. I mean, I've been involved on the
Yeah.
back end of video production, and there's like a lot of stuff where you're like, God grief, we got to take like 37 because somebody screwed up the like one word type of a thing. And we got to go through the whole thing again. And it sucks. Like it's not a fun thing. And so I think sometimes we immediately gravitate towards this, oh, well, we're going to create things that are new and like it's a threat versus looking at the landscape of things that we do today that we go, this is work a lot of people hate doing. But now going back to my example of rather than taking the 37th take, like you said, we do one take and we can go, hey, if we need to make some edits or tweaks or you screwed up a word, we can just kind of edit it in form instead of saying, all right, everybody, sorry, you're not going to get to go home to your families tonight because we got to do 5 more takes of this thing because we screwed it up.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Just in many cases, it just make people lives easier, and they have better and fun jobs, whatever they do. And in the end, of course, when I watch this movie, I have the better quality. So when I see something, I'm not aware of like how many technology affected this movie, and like if you've seen like Dune, the second part, yeah, or like something else. I'm pretty sure there are lots of AI in when they produce it, lots of new things, because and when you compare these movies and movies that was like 20 years ago, of course you see the difference, how
Oh, yeah.
things are changing, and like how much better things are right now, and it's
Yeah.
much easier to create it now than before. Of course, I mean, in terms of like these small things, yeah, like small that repeatable stuff or something else.
Okay. So I want to talk about some of the specific capabilities just to help people understand how some of this stuff works. So let's break these down based on kind of a couple different components that I know, you've specialized in, but I think it's capabilities that it's just good for people to understand. So let's talk about like the voice cloning component first. Like that's let's break that down in terms of, so when you say voice cloning, what does that mean? Like how do you describe that to somebody?
Yeah, so voice cloning is basically a text-to-speech technology, but why we say cloning is because the model is able to provide this voice in your specific voice. So how it works is just basically we have a model that has a text as an input and give the audio of this text as an output, but you
Okay.
can tune it with your own voice. So basically you just if somebody is familiar with 11 labs, you just need like 30 minutes of your voice to record into the system, into their model, and then you have your own voice. So you basically record your voice, then you put any text, and the system is basically providing your own voice in like, so just from 30 seconds of your voice. So it's like ability to replicate your voice and like use it from just text. You don't need to record yourself each time.
Okay. Now, from an accuracy standpoint, I'm curious your take on how this has evolved because I've been playing around with this stuff. Even it's so funny how mainstream this stuff has come, where it used to be, again, you'd have to have a whole production team trying to do this because if you actually look into this, even in movies, and it was sometimes controversial, like if an actor passed away, I can't remember what movie it was, but they actually did some AI voice cloning to help finish some of the lines that didn't get done so that they could finish the movie. Because it was like, well, what are you going to do? You can't just change somebody's voice 3/4 through the movie. Everybody's going to pick it up. But like it used to take massive amounts of efforts to actually be able to clone. And I'm curious 2 things. One, how much data does it actually require to train your algorithms to actually be able to clone? Like, let's say we wanted to capture my voice and clone it. How much voice do you need for me to do that? And then how accurate is it in terms of, being able to, some of the nuances or the tonal differences or the way certain people express themselves? Because I think sometimes when I've heard people respond to this, they're like, oh yeah, I've heard AI voice before, and you can definitely tell it's a robot. And so I'm curious your take on how you're approaching that one.
Yeah, it's actually changed a lot during the last couple years. So even like 2 years ago, we didn't have such a quality as we have right now. So before, like when we started to work on Elai, I think you always could feel that this voice is robotic. So it just started to be like, okay, more natural and sounds like much, much better. But now, no, you cannot say like we did the research, and basically people are not able to define where is like. So as I used to these voices for a long of time, then I can in some cases I can
Okay.
say, okay, this is like text to speech. It is like voice
So is
clone.
it kind of, in some ways, I have a clone of my voice, and I've toyed around with it. But I'm curious your take on this because you're around it a lot more. Do you see it kind of being like what happened with ChatGPT, where when ChatGPT first came out, like lots of people were using it to create written content. And then over time, people could kind of tell, like, I can kind of tell that it's written by ChatGPT. Like it has a little bit of an artificial flavor to it that you can detect. Would you say that like you're close enough to it that you can still kind of sense, like, I think this might be artificial sweetener, but it's not so obvious that just anybody would pick up on it?
I think it depends on the duration a lot. So the voice
Okay.
itself, for example, your voice clone could sound really like you, but when you listen to a podcast versus like text to speech voice clone voice for like long time, you see the difference because what is really like is emotion. So when you have a text to speech, it's always not that emotional as the real your voice, because when you speak, you have a like you have pauses, you have lots of different emotions, and
Yeah.
that text to speech is not that emotional. But anyway, it's changing, and pretty sure like in a year or two, even like your voice. But again, maybe you need to record more of your voice to create your voice clone to be more emotional. But I'm pretty sure at some stage people won't see the difference.
Okay. Okay. Well, and I feel like we'll just kind of, again, similar to some of the generative AI stuff. People will. I just read an article the other day that said that it was like a couple words that have just exploded since the advancement of generative AI, because now people are creating so much generative AI content, and certain words that we just never used in the English language before all of a sudden are everywhere because it's like, well, AI is using it. So I wonder if we'll start to see some of that. But again, text to voice, you're not having AI come up with the script necessarily. So even going back to our earlier point, there's still a human in the loop on that, because what is being generated, I mean, I guess in theory you could ask ChatGPT to write the script and then have the script be read by an AI
Yeah,
voice, and then the
it's
whole
actually
thing's
a
just AI.
common case.
But
Yeah.
it's then it is going to sound robotic, because it's going to be like, well, that's not how a human talks.
Yeah, it's actually a case like when people try to like use more of generative AI on different stages. So on like text stage, on voice stage, on avatar stage, but still it depends on what you want to achieve, of course. But in our case, like what we do is actually we help people to generate text or like modify text using ChatGPT, for example, but we
Okay.
always have human in the loop. So on any stage when you create video with Elai, you still see like how it works, and it's always require human to change stuff. Yeah, because whatever
Yeah.
generative AI is like doing, it's not human. Yeah, and it's not might be not something that you want to have. So we always have human who is basically changing things before the final video is ready. And I think
Okay.
it's going to be working like that for a long time, because humans are not replaceable. They have something that machine cannot do yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so I am curious, because you did hit on one of these things, and I do think this is a legitimate kind of eyebrow raise that I do see around like the voice to text, and we'll get to the video piece next, but let's focus on the voice to text for now. We're talking about cloning, so taking somebody's voice print and basically creating a replicate of it that you could then type text and it would sound like that person speaking it. How do you safeguard some of that so that, you're keeping people's identities? And I think this is one of the things that we're going to have to navigate, even just from a regulatory standpoint in the future, where like, how do you not have somebody end up misrepresenting somebody by capturing their voice and then using it without necessarily their consent?
It's a good question, and I think it's a task for the companies like us, like those who actually are able to create such technologies, and of course for governments, for everybody. Um, it's I think that the way how we can handle it is the same as like something else before. Yeah, like when people started to use internet, on where people started to use like credit cards. It's like you cannot steal a credit card of somebody and use it, right? So the same is here. Like if it's illegal, then we, for example, are not allowing to like voice clone or like clone avatar without the permission. And
Okay.
if somebody is coming out to us and say, "Can I make a video avatar of like Tom Cruise or somebody else?" We cannot allow it. Yeah, so
Okay.
it,
Well, and
it
that's where I was curious from a process standpoint, because I'm thinking about my voice clone. I remember I had to go through a fair amount of steps, kind of authorizing the use of that voice for it to make a clone of it, type of a thing. And there was a fair amount of kind of security measures in place to make sure I wasn't just grabbing a sound clip off the internet and going like, "Hey, can you make the voice of so and so," type of a thing, and add it to my library.
Yeah, for example, you might face that you need to say in your voice like that you are proving to make this voice to be cloned. So the same for us. We see the person who is like talking to us and like what exactly the avatar look like, because we create avatars from videos. So it's all measurable. Of course, you can also automate stuff. So for example, there are models that can check if the voice, photo, or footage is like from some famous people, and it also can be checked. So it's lots of things that you can use, and people and companies will use to protect. So my vision is that like it's gonna be regulated as anything else in our world. Like of course there are gonna be some misuse of the technology,
For
as
sure.
it was the misuse of previous technologies. But the pattern is the same. Some people and most of people and technology itself will evolve and will do the good things in most
Yeah.
cases.
Well, and I think that's a good point to bring up in this, because sometimes when I hear the concerns about these things, they're legitimate concerns and I understand them. And I agree that there are risks we need to mitigate. But I think sometimes we can operate off this kind of false pretense that it wasn't possible before and now it is. And it's like, well, it was possible before, so it's not like these risks didn't exist and now we've created new risks. There's just new and different ways that those risks can be applied. But as you brought that back, because for anybody watching and listening who's going like, well, how do you know your voice isn't just being cloned, type of a thing? I remember when I cloned my voice, I actually had to, and it was unexpected. Like, you gave it the audio clip and then it asked you, "I need you right now to record saying this is so and so, and I authorize this." And then the AI validated that is the
Yeah,
person who's authorizing this the same voice that we're now adding to the clone. And there was some detection even in that to make sure that I wasn't using an AI voice clip to say, "Yes, I authorize
yeah,
this whole
exactly.
thing." And so like it actually had to come from my microphone, type of a thing. So there are definitely some security measures in place to make sure you're not. So anybody who's listening to this thinking like, "Hey, great, we could have Morgan Freeman narrate all of our e-learning." It's not going to work. You're not going to be able to go grab like your favorite celebrity and
Yeah,
create that.
it's the same. Like when, for example, when you put a video on YouTube, it checks what music you use, right? It checks anything that's like even without AI, yeah, you cannot just like use somebody else to use in your stuff. It's the same here. Like it's you don't even need to change the rules, right? Because you can use Morgan
No.
Freeman videos and identity in any ways, yeah, in your content. So it's just like different ways of content, different types of content, but still the rules are the same. You can do this, and you couldn't do it before.
No, no, yeah, it's not opening a floodgate of stuff that was just,
Exactly.
previously impossible type of thing. But I know I get that question sometimes. We're like, well, aren't you worried that these kinds of things could happen? It's like, I mean, technically, if somebody is really trying to be nefarious, they're going to try and figure out ways around it. And that's a risk that's true at all times. Just like you said, like people can hijack your credit card today. It's not like
Yeah.
it didn't exist before, but I think there are parameters in place. So that's super helpful for the voice cloning in terms of what you can do. And I want to talk through some of the use cases, but let's talk about the video because I'm guessing it's following a similar process where, you're using, just like you're using a voice print to kind of capture the voice, you're also probably using a video to then capture the video. Now, how much kind of data do you need on that to be able to create a video clone of somebody?
Yeah, so it's pretty much the same. We need in our case we need 2 minutes of the video footage when a person is like
It only takes 2 minutes of video footage to
exactly, yeah,
capture that?
not much. Yeah, we just need to actually see how your lips are moving according to the voice, according to the audio, and it gives the model ability to then basically use these movements to other audio, and that is how it works. So we need 2 minutes, and then you just say how you usually say, how you want your avatar to look like. So, for example, like how you want to move your head and hands and everything, and then your avatar will behave the same.
So
So
in terms of capturing, I mean, to me, it's always interesting on these. So to capture the video piece, now when you're capturing video stuff, is it, do you need enough of a video clip to kind of see like the dimensions of somebody's head so that if they turn and things like that, it looks, or is it just because I've seen on your stuff, like you can literally from a selfie video
yeah,
create a video clone of yourself.
it depends on the technology. So for now, most of the companies, they don't change the video itself. So if you move like this, your avatar also will move like this. So basically on the footage and on the avatar it has the same movement, so we don't need to
Okay.
have your this look if you don't film that, yeah.
Typically
But
do that. Okay.
now we are turning into like the next level of technologies where basically you're gonna have your 3D model of
Model.
your full body, or like chest up body. Then yeah, like
Okay.
of course we will require a bit more of the footage, so we see clearly like your all the parts of your face. And then basically, but it gives much more opportunities. Then you can actually avatar can not only like speak but also can do anything. Like if you want avatar to blink or like to move some face gestures, it's all gonna be possible. So I
Okay.
think next level of avatars are all like fully customizable in terms of like what they can do on the scene.
I mean, what's funny is every Friday I do a weekly update. So for anybody who doesn't listen to this, I don't do them on live on LinkedIn, but I publish a podcast where I kind of hit on some of the latest happenings and just kind of reflect on some of these things. And AI influencers, it's kind of a big thing now where it's like, well, now the technology, it's still not quite there, but it's getting there where, a lot of the AI generated video you see with a clone, it's like this. It's more of a talking head. The person's kind of moving a little bit, but it's a little more static. And it's now getting to this point where, you can take the person's full 3D body clone and you can put them in a car and make it seem like they're sitting in their car doing this other stuff. And it's kind of bonkers because the rise of AI influencers, and I'm not talking about people who talk about AI, but people who are just,
Not
trying to
real at
sell you
all.
AG1 or whatever, from their living room. You start to go, wait a minute, is this even like a real person sitting in their car doing this anymore? Or is this a person that actually it is a real person, but it's completely artificially generated.
It even couldn't be a real person. Like we see lots of
Well,
examples
that's
when
true.
there is fully AI generated person that's never existed before. So it's all gonna happen, and we definitely gonna see lots of content that we are not sure like if it's real or not. Like for example, OpenAI saw a technology that can produce like 10 seconds clips that really looks like reality. And what I think it's gonna happen is like basically YouTube will put the badge on all AI generated videos, like it's AI generated, and so all the
They've
YouTube.
already started doing it. They've already started
Okay,
doing it. So because
I
I'm a
didn't see.
YouTube creator, I get to see this stuff. The thing is right now, it's kind of like the honor system. So when you put content on YouTube, and it's actually buried down in the like advanced notes, like there's like a did you use any of this, check yes or no type of a thing. But I think to your point, it's going to get to the place where it's just going to be able to detect it, and it's going to say like no, it either is or it isn't, and it's going to automatically flag it. Just like if you upload a video to YouTube with a song, a famous song, and you just
Yeah.
layer it in, it'll flag your content and go, sorry, you can't do that.
Yeah, definitely. It's lots of companies. I think YouTube definitely working on this, like on basically a
Big time.
detector of AI usage. The same as like, for example, if you use ChatGPT to like create SEO content, Google is already like detecting all such kind of content. So basically, all it's gonna be detectable. I mean, it's all algorithms. So basically, other algorithms can see if AI was used. Even like we humans, we might not notice that, but YouTube will be able to do it.
Yeah, and it is funny because I was talking about this. I don't know if it was a couple weeks ago, but we were talking about this where AI has one, when it creates something, it has a very distinct pattern in how it does it. That again, to a human, we might not even be able to detect it. I mean, sometimes you can, like if the person says, this uses some of these obscure words, you're like, I don't think you
Yeah,
actually
it's
said
types
that.
of cases.
But then
Yeah,
there's other ones that are much more subtle. But to your point, the AI algorithms are getting to a point where they can start to detect like that wasn't actually created by a real person. That was completely artificially generated, which like what we're talking about in this content generation, where it starts to get a little messy is when it's like, well, it is AI, but it's made in partnership with a person. So where do we draw that line of was it truly artificially generated, or
yeah.
like how much of it is actually artificial then?
I think if you use just a little bit, it will already be like marked as AI. Yeah, because of course you can just modify existing video, or like you can modify just 1 second of the video. So I don't know. We'll see, but I think it somehow will be regulated. Somehow people will see if it's AI or not, or even like we gonna feel it's like when it's gonna be much more of such content, we gonna feel it because when people is like they also learn from the content they watch. Yeah, so the more and more, for example, we're gonna see like ads with AI people, AI generated ads, or like personalized ads. Yeah, it's of course we will understand that it's AI because this ad was created specifically for me with my name on it, for
Yeah,
example.
yeah.
So
It literally said my name in the ad. There's no way that they actually went and
exactly,
filmed a
and
whole
I
ad
think
and
also
decided to
for
say it for
brands,
Christopher.
they don't really need to. I think we're just gonna get used to AI content, and content creators won't need to hide that it's made by AI. Why not? Like if it works, if the content is working, if it's made by
Yeah.
AI, so who cares? Like I mean, what is a disadvantage? So most people will look content, whatever it is AI or not. If they like it, they watch it. If they don't like it, they don't watch it.
I agree. And I think this is where, and this is where we'll get to some of the positive use cases for this, because I think we are in this weird kind of awkward stage where everybody's like using artificial intelligence for stuff, a lot of this Gen AI stuff for stuff, but it's also kind of taboo to say that you're using generative AI for stuff. And like people have mixed emotions about how they feel about it. and all this. And to your point, I think we're going to get to a point where people go, I don't really care. I just care, did it resonate with me or not? And some folks are going to really resonate towards certain things, and others are going to go, no. And I think there are just different use cases, which is why I think it's important for us to kind of unpack the use case around learning and educational content, because I think there is a lot of opportunity for AI generated content where ultimately it's not the avatar, it's not the voice, it's not the background that is actually making the content valuable. It's what's in the content that makes it valuable. And what this really can do is then eliminate a lot of that kind of operational stuff that really slows the process down.
Yeah, it's not only the time, it's also about the quality of content. Because, for example, I am like expert in some topic. Yeah, what I can
Yep.
do, I can write an article. Yeah, so my audience would need to sit and read for 10 minutes for like to learn something from me. And with new technologies like AI avatars, AI voices, this I can just turn my knowledge into like something more engaging, much more fun. And this is
Yeah.
exactly what we do. So we changing how people can create learning content, which works much better. So specifically, Elai is focusing on like learning inside enterprises, inside companies. And
Yep.
before, they used lots of like PPTX presentations, texts, and super boring like learning materials, which people hated to read, hated to learn from.
I have no idea what you're talking about. I have never experienced that. Everything I've always experienced in corporate learning is always rich and engaging and so much fun.
You then it might be a really lucky company and it's something exceptional.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, but I
because
think to your point, I
what
think to
we
your point
face,
on that. Oh, go for it. Go for it.
yeah, what we face is really like people using AI, they turn really like boring PPTs, long files with like 50 slides into the videos. That's now their employees can watch and like understand and like spend much less time on the learning things.
Okay.
And
Well, and
it's
I think, to your point on that, because I even think about the work that can go into. So I think anybody can probably recognize or be familiar with this kind of incident, or maybe this is you, um, where you may have a lot of really good knowledge about something that you do, or you may be really well versed in how something works. And you may know what that is, but the number of people who aren't necessarily the best at being able to get it out of their head, and even if they can get it out of their head, to your example, maybe they can dump it into a PowerPoint. We've all been subject to that thing where that person is then now going through their PowerPoint with you, and you'd probably rather listen to nails on a chalkboard, because it's just the person does not have the skill set to actually engage and present and connect the
yeah,
dots between some of these things. And it's not that they're not smart or they don't have the value. It's just that's not their skill set, is their ability to translate this. And in the past, to your point, that's where you end up with the Franken power deck. That's like, okay, what do we do with this? And then heaven forbid you're like, hey, Judy or Bill, can you present this to an audience? And Judy or Bill is not a skilled presenter, and now they've got a Franken, and it's honestly a nightmare.
yeah, exactly. It's really common use case. So that we have basically a person who is like making the topic, and he knows how to like he knows he's expert in some topic, but he's not the narrator. He's not able to like present and pack it into like good learning content. So before, there was other people who were specifically into like packing his knowledge into something that people can learn, and now we have to do it automatically and speed up things. So for example, now we can turn like the big amount of text and knowledge of some person, so we can even like turn his speech into the text. Then we can unpack and like make the beautiful slides with avatar from this text, and then turn it into the video, even like with questions. So for example, now this expert can tell something, then ask questions about this topic. So when I learn from this content, I engaged, I need to click buttons, I need to interact with this content. And it's even more that we are working on, and like really how people create learning content is like it's going to be changing a lot, and it's just going to be much more fun to learn something in the future.
Well, and I think of an example of how this has happened in, I mean, I've worked in a lot of different organizations, and I've supported a lot of different organizations over the years. And there's one in particular where I remember, and again, for its time, it was a great solution and it solved a big problem, which was they had a platform that they would have subject matter experts take any of their really like big knowledgeable presentations, where they would do subject matter expertise stuff, and they would go into like a Zoom or something like that. And then it would be like, just record yourself giving this presentation and it'll automatically get uploaded and added to the archive of things. And believe it or not, people actually would go into these. But I remember the first time I went in and experienced this thing, and I'm like, there are thousands of hours of literally just painful PowerPoint presentations being delivered. And that was the solution. And it's like, if you were a new employee and it's like, oh, you're trying to figure out how to do this, here, go subject yourself to what to me is like prisoner of war tactics. Like, I feel like this is something you would do to try and get secret information out of people. Be like, you know what we're going to do? We're going to put you in our knowledge base and we're going to make you watch these PowerPoints until you tell us what we want to know. And it would probably work. But I think to your point, what we can do with this is say, well, why does that have to be the experience that people have to suffer through to be able to find and get the information that they need and get it in a way that's actually consumable and more digestible?
Exactly. Yeah, and even further, like what we are working on is basically real-time avatars. So using the combination of large language models like OpenAI, GPT, and avatars, you can basically create lessons, or you can create communications with avatars. So it's like the next level of like how people can learn. Yes, so for now they watch video, they click buttons, but for some topics, for example sales training, yeah, they need real interactions with somebody, real conversations. And this is something that also can be like, for example, there is a teacher who really good at his like sales training, yeah, but he cannot talk to anyone. Yeah, he cannot teach.
Yeah, he's not on. There's not like the bat signal that signals this person to just jump on a call with whoever needs him on a moment's notice.
Exactly. So he can use now AI to basically transfer his knowledge in the way that he like into like much more people, because he just basically can clone and use AI to basically do the job for him while he can focus on something else.
Well, and what's interesting about that is at the beginning of this year, and again, this is getting into some what may feel like trippy stuff for people, and I get it. It can feel a little trippy. But I talked about this at the beginning of this year, that where I see generative AI going and some of these capabilities is we are going to move into the age where we move beyond passive consumption. And things are really, the expectation becomes things are more interactive and it's more of an active experience. So to your point, kind of this next generation is, well, we've moved from, oh, we have this PowerPoint with this painful voice with this person who's just going through this stuff. Now AI is making it so that we can improve it. It's more engaging, it's more valuable, like it's a little easier to consume. To really what you're talking about, the next generation is, why would you have to sit and watch a static video that someone else assumed you needed all that information, when you could build that knowledge set into an AI model that you then interact with in real time, that maybe is giving information, but you actually have the ability to ask follow-up questions or whatever, in a sense where it doesn't have to be limited to a live human interaction.
Exactly. Yeah, I think we really moving forward into that world when we're gonna talk to avatars and like ask them questions, or avatars will ask questions, ask us questions and like assess us. So it's a really lots of things that gonna change for the next, I don't know, 5-10 years. So we turning into something really new and fun, and yeah, really looking
Well,
forward,
and
and happy to be in like in the pioneering of all the things.
well, yeah, because you're right on the brink of this. And I think it's one of those things where that's where I was curious, like you said, it's the technology's not quite there yet in terms of its scalability to do that kind of stuff. At least not at the dynamic level that we're seeing. Now, I know I've been following this like agents. I'll talk about it this Friday. We are seeing more like AI agents capabilities being spun up where we can say, hey, we could train an AI agent to have the capability of this to be able to, like we described, answer questions, support people, have a specifically trained knowledge set. And then I'm curious what your prediction is. How close are we to that kind of capability flowing its way into kind of interactive content like that?
I think the technology is faster than the ability of the markets to adopt it. So,
Okay.
for example, if you're talking about LLMs, or even like the next phase is like voice conversation, um, it's all there. Yeah, like the voice cloning is pretty good so far. Avatars, like real-time avatars, it's like pretty much in 2 years we're gonna have all technology possibilities ready.
Okay.
But the market adoption and like more specific products for specific markets, this is something that will take time. So because what we faced in Eli is that like when you trying to adopt the technology to specific problem, it really it's absolutely different way. Yeah, so it's not something that you have the technology, but it's more like try to penetrate, because in the companies there are many people working and all they things different ways, and even now lots of people they're not like ready to adopt AI avatars. Yeah, because it's
Yeah.
like super new thing. But in terms of how it really helps and how it changed how people are like producing this content, and of course like the content itself, it becomes much more engaging and fun, and someday they will adopt it, because otherwise new employees will
You're
come to
not going to
them and
have a
say,
choice.
yeah, why don't you
Yeah.
still use it? Like everybody's using this, like it's a new stuff, you need to use it because it's just like it makes people life easier.
Well, and I think your point is spot on in terms of kind of there's a big difference between technology capability and then market adoption.
Yeah.
And I think that is, what we're, I mean, again, we described it earlier where we're still in this stage where people are even a little unsettled about like, well, how much AI should we really be using? And where do we draw that line between when we have humans in the loop and when we think about educational content? I mean, I just even think about the example of, what we've described in terms of current state. That's still a pretty safe environment to be using AI to generate educational content where you can say, hey, like, there's still a human involved in kind of the creating the content. There's still a human involved in shaping which models or which avatars you're using and how you want it to work, type of a thing. When you start moving to autonomous agents, it does start to shift things a little bit, even from an educational content, because it's like, well, what if somebody asks these kinds of questions, or what if they want to know this kind of information? How far do we want to let autonomous AI just go before we go, you know what, that line of questioning is more advanced and we're comfortable
uh,
with you getting from an interactive video?
Yeah, I think it's not, it's just the changing how like you communicate with information. Yeah, like the way how
Right.
you actually can have this information, but still there is a human who control what this agent can know, and like how exactly this agent should behave, and like what should he say. Yeah, so I don't see any risks here, because it's always the creator and the company and the owners who actually are controlling what AI can do. Like in our case, what content is in the video. In agent case, what is in this database that's actually agent operating with. So it's all can be controlled by a human, and AI doesn't have any conscious or like ability to think. It just like do what their creators want them to do, and that's it.
Yeah.
So it's all fully controllable, and just resolving the problems that owner and creator of this model want to resolve.
So I'm actually curious, and for those of you who are watching or listening, feel free to comment in because I'm actually curious your take on this. But on your end, Alex, where are you seeing folks on the adoption curve when it comes to things like AI for voice, AI for video? Are people in kind of this still? Are you still dealing a lot with like early adopters who maybe see like, yeah, of course we're going to do this. This is naturally where we go. Is kind of the middle starting to move more towards this, like, yeah, we use it pretty regularly? Where are we on the adoption curve? And for those of you listening or watching, I'm actually curious, how many of you might be using AI tools to actually create, and again, I don't think just like the written content, but the voice, the video content.
I think it's pretty early yet in terms of like the
Okay.
usage. So we had this super huge hype the beginning of the last year in 2023 in January, when like first this chat GPT came up, and this is something that really give the boost. But after that, we've seen that people still couldn't understand how properly use this technology yet. And now
Okay.
it's a time when the hype is already down. So basically now we see that people who stay and still use it, they use it to really resolve problems. And now it's just gonna
Okay.
start organically grow and be
Okay.
used by many people, of course. And I have a friend who actually creates movies using AI, and this is his full-time job. We
Really?
are AI company who is like all about AI. So of course,
Oh
from
yeah,
our
for sure.
perspective, like it's something that we live in. But there are tons of people who even don't know what's going on, and they never heard about it. And
Yeah.
for them, we need like couple years at least to this technology to be somehow used by them, yeah, in some
Okay.
ways, as a
No, that's
support
super helpful
task
because
in a
just
month, yeah, or something.
okay. Well, and I think that's helpful because I definitely think we saw the major AI hype cycle, coming out of 2022 into 2023. It was just like everybody thought
Yeah,
everything was going to be AI. And then a lot of it died down because there was a lot of junk. I mean, there honestly was. There was a ton of like, we could do AI for this. And you're like, why would you
yeah, it's
do
a
that? Like,
hype.
it didn't
It's
even make sense.
yeah,
And so now we've kind of crashed out of that. And to your point, though, I think we'll slowly start to see the adoption. And I know, even just from my own personal experience, it's one of those things, again, going back at some of the concerns or hesitations people have. The people I know who have adopted this, and even myself as a creator, I actually find AI helps me be more creative and do more things than I was in the past. It's not like it's pulling away from what I was doing. It actually, I mean, that's just been my experience where I'm like, oh, before I wasn't able to do this. Now I can because the technology is capable of doing it. And I
yeah.
think the
It's
same is true with like AI video and voice, where it's like, well, before you wouldn't have even had the time or the energy or the capability to do it. Now you can actually exercise your creativity in new and different ways.
exactly, and it's the same way adopting in everything. And in our case, we don't actually, our clients, they don't came to us from the when they created real videos. In our case, most of our clients did PPTX presentations before, so it's not about like replacing. It's just like bringing new things into their
Yep.
environment, into how they create content. Because
Yeah.
those who like spend tons of money on video creation, and it means that it works for them, they wanted that, and they might not want to change it now. But again, who knows, like in the if they see the benefit of like turning and using more AI, why not? I mean, it's all going to be in the future.
Well, and I use this analogy a lot. I think it goes back to, sometimes we can fall into this false mindset that like the box is only this big. And so if AI takes up part of the box, there's less. When actually AI just, we're kind of in this
Yeah, making
constantly
box bigger.
expanding box. And it's like, well, all we're doing is creating more space to be able to exercise new and different things. To your point, whether it's you used to do PowerPoints and now you can create interactive video, to even if you're in a high production movie scene, it might be like, yeah, but before we used to have to pay or we didn't have the budget to do some of these stunts or this other stuff. It's like, well, now we can just do it all in CGI, and it allows us to just do more with our creativity.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, Alex, this has been super fun and we are right at time. So I want to be sensitive to that. But this has been really insightful and helpful. I hope it encourages people to at least experiment and toy around with some of this stuff because the technology is there and it is extremely powerful with what you can do. And so I appreciate you unpacking it with me and just helping people better understand what's possible. So thanks for making the time.
Yeah, thank you. Was great to chat and discuss about future of ourselves.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody for watching, listening. If you didn't catch the whole thing, the live replay will be on all the usual channels after this. And also, if you aren't subscribed to my Substack, make sure you are because you'll get the Cliff Notes version of some of my biggest reflections a couple days after the stream. So we will talk to you all later and see you next week.